Yeah? All right. Hello guys, hello everybody, and welcome already to the last day of the Odoo experience. I hope you already had a great time, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Brett. I'm the managing partner of Resolve. I'm also the product owner of the company. But today I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about one of our cases, and it's about the journey of one of our customers that migrated from NetSuite to Odoo. The company I'm going to tell you about in a minute, but first let me ask you a question, and you can just raise your hand. Is there anybody in the audience who ever experienced the pain points of having outdated software maybe? All right, is there someone maybe that, that has some software that just doesn't fit the business need? Or maybe you have just something in your process that's not digitalized at all. So maybe you're using Excel or different system, so your data is scattered. Well, all of these pain points, they were all the case. But before I dive into that, let me first introduce you to Ayano. Ayano is actually a company, a manufacturing company, and they design and decorate bottles and glasses. So if you don't know them, most of their clients are, for example, Coca-Cola or Kikkoman or Jack Daniels. And actually they do millions of bottles and glasses each year. What they do is they focus on high quality products, and they focus on designing but also manufacturing them. And they operate mainly in the Benelux and France, but they have a huge ambition to go to the European market even more. And that's why we support them in the transition from NetSuite to Odoo. If you don't know Ayano yet, maybe next time when you go to drink a beer or something, I invite you to turn around your glass, because on the back of the glass you always have a mark until where you can fill, the bartender can fill the beer. And beneath this mark there is always the logo of the manufacturer. So next time when you drink a beer, I invite you to just turn it around, and on the back you can see if it's one of Ayano's glasses. All right, so Ayano, they have an ambition to go to the European market, but this also comes with some challenges. Challenges of growth, but also some challenges they had with NetSuite. And today, I want to take you into this journey of what their challenges are, and how we help them to convert them into a product that could help them to improve their business. So the challenge. First of all, while they were having NetSuite, the whole manufacturing and warehouse was running on pen and paper. And this is because of other difficulties with NetSuite, and that's why they didn't invest in digitalizing the manufacturing and warehouse. But as you can imagine, if you have a warehouse that's running fully on pen and paper, you have some delay because all this manual input has to be put in the system afterwards. This creates a delay of around 3, 4, 5 days, so you never have real-time data. I also guess I don't have to explain you the margin for error if you have pen and paper and manual labor. So this also is a risk, and the main goal for them to grow is real-time data. And with the warehouse and manufacturing, as it's the core of your business, and it's done on pen and paper, you don't get this real-time data. That was the main importance for them to make a transition and to migrate to a new system. On top of that, it's also very difficult to get reporting out of NetSuite and to even get data out of NetSuite. NetSuite knows something as safe searches, which is something that can be implemented to get data out of NetSuite in Excel files, but this is mostly not a very good format. The data is not well structured or difficult to use to make your reportings. Also, NetSuite was hosted of one of their own servers, so they don't have access to the database and the data in it. Another one major important thing was that NetSuite wasn't fitted for the Belgian accounting. So they didn't get the right reports out of NetSuite, so they invested a lot in customizations just to make sure that they could follow the Belgian law every month, every quarter, and every year. So that's a lot of effort. And lastly, they also have a branch in Romania, and also this one wasn't fully capable of serving the needs of this branch, so that's why they integrated another system. This means that their data was scattered across different systems, which made it even more difficult to consolidate them or to do consolidated reporting. These challenges were all holding them back for their growth plan, and that's when we came in contact and we decided to help them with implementing a new system, Odoo. And now what I will talk to you about today is how we did it, what are the challenges, and what are the migration tips if you might consider the same challenge. All right, the process. So during the process, we focused on 3 cornerstones. The first one is the review, followed by an analysis, and then the implementation. For us, these 3 cornerstones and the sequence of them is for us really important. Let me guide you through them. When we start with the review, is actually a strategic alignment. We started with Ayano to see what are the strategic goals. They had a growth plan, they had an ambition, but it was difficult for us to implement the system and to understand NetSuite and Odoo if we didn't understand their ambition and their goals. So we need to understand what are their strategic goals, what are the challenges, and what's holding them back, in order to get a plan of action to make sure that everything we do was in line with the strategic goal. How we did this? We did some workshops on 4 areas, so we focused on the strategic side, but also the different business domains, so sales, operations, and finance. And we did this on 3 levels. In each of these areas, we focus on the organization first to get the overall view. Then we moved down to processes to get our processes. And lastly, we went into the different systems they used. They used NetSuite, Excels, different calculation tools, and even pen and paper work to make sure that the whole business was covered. Once we got this whole view, we could go through to the designing the blueprint, the analysis. For us, it was the most important thing because they already had a full scope in NetSuite, and I will show you in a minute. So for us, it was really important to understanding what are they doing exactly. So first, we mapped out the processes. And during this mapping of the processes, we first drew them out, and then we also checked them in practice. So we went into the warehouse, into the manufacturing site, to see if the processes we mapped are actually used by the end users. So when we went to the implementation, we knew that this was doing right. Because NetSuite didn't cover the manufacturing and inventory apps in NetSuite, it was for us crucial because it was fully new to them to make sure that we understood it completely right. Based on that, we gathered the requirements. The system had a broad scope. As I said, I will come back to that in a minute. But for us, it was really important to know what the scope of the organization is, what are the requirements, and to also make sure that we can implement the right things first. We have to make priorities, and the first goal for us was to implement Odoo so that they could leave NetSuite and start using Odoo. And based on that, we could build further and further to make sure that they can optimize and build further on their software. So for that, we made a project plan in different phases that first included the migration from NetSuite to Odoo, followed by the extra optimizations that was possible when they had Odoo and the extra apps that were available. Now let's go to the implementation. So what was the scope of NetSuite they were using? They were mainly using sales, purchase, and accounting, as this was the administration part of Ayano. On top of that, they also had manufacturing and inventory in NetSuite, but they didn't use it in practice, they only used it afterwards to fill in their orders. Now when we translated this to Odoo, we didn't want to just copy, we also wanted to innovate and to make it better. So we translated this to the following Odoo scope. So first of all, it was crucial for us that sales was a major part of their organization. So we had to make sure that the basics were right. So we started with CRM and sales, just to make sure that every contact was captured, all the information was stored, and that they had one central place where they could find all the client information. Before this, when using NetSuite, they were sending quotes from a different system, they were doing orders in NetSuite, and client communication was done by mail. By integrating everything into Odoo, we made sure that all communication was centralized in one system, and when they grow and get different companies in different countries, they can all see this communication and work on their client base. Also purchasing, inventory, and manufacturing, the operational part was very important for us. As this was first done on pen and paper, it was for us a crucial part to digitalize, and so we really invested heavily in making sure that everything we do was making sense. So we optimized operational processes, we did the inventory, we did the manufacturing and purchase to make sure that everything was neatly integrated. We also did an integration between the inventory and the operational part and sales, because sales is driven by the amount you can actually produce and deliver. So that's why it's very important when people do sales, they can also deliver to their promise and make sure that everything they sell is also made and delivered in time. Accounting is also a really important thing for Ayano because they have companies in Belgium, Netherlands, France, and so on. It's also important to get a consolidated view of every company and to have an integrated accounting view. Because I told you before, NetSuite didn't have this for Belgium, so they heavily invested in it. So it's very nice that Odoo, out of the box, has this reporting, so we could fall back on that and make sure that everything was due to the Belgian law. The last apps we introduced was to just make it a little bit better and improve them by adding barcode scanning to improve their workflows, by adding the help desk to integrating more communication to clients, and maintenance so they could also schedule maintenance for their machines to make sure they have the most optimal planning. While implementing Odoo, we saw a lot of things, and first of all, the most important thing was to get an end-to-end NetSuite migration. When you have a system this large, and the whole organization is on it, to give you an idea, there are around 150, 130, 150 people. When you do a migration like this, it's very important that you do this at once. If I can choose, I would do a phased migration, but when you have a system this large, it's very important that every part of the business can still use the system, so it's very difficult to only start with sales, operations, or finance. So that's, for this case, it was important to do an end-to-end migration. And what was most important for Ayano was real-time data. So it was important that we not only did the migration, but also optimized the warehouse. That's why also paperless scanning was very important, and most of all, the most important thing of Odoo was enhanced reporting. So it was creating reporting that they could get out of Odoo themselves, they could create dashboards themselves and get insight into their data. Because they believe, and I fully agree, that you only can grow a company if you get insight into your data and make data-driven decisions. Now let's go to some migration tips, because this migration took quite a while. Actually, we started in November, and it took for about 3 months to do the whole migration. But we see the most difficult part of this migration is change management, and I will come to that back in a minute. Let's get back to the start of this migration, and one of the major tips we saw was start with the data. As I already told you, NetSuite's data is very difficult to access and also structured in a quite difficult way. But all this data needed to be transferred to Odoo. So for us it was very difficult, but also very important from the beginning to get a full insight on how the data is structured, which data is important, and how they could get it to Odoo. So that's why we started with the data, and from the beginning we tried to get everything out of NetSuite that was possible to make sure that all the data they need to use in Odoo and to follow that process was integrated. So if you're considering a migration from NetSuite, I highly suggest start with the data because it's a very important topic. Next, don't stick to old processes. As you can imagine, every system has its own processes, and sometimes organizations get stuck in these processes. NetSuite has them, Odoo has them, but it's very difficult if you want to do a migration to stick to these old processes and to hold on to them. Large organizations are a bit, are really flexible, so it's quite difficult to make this transition. But with Ayano it went really well. They were really open to new processes, so they also adapted them to the Odoo way of working, which was actually slightly different sometimes, but improved our implementation time and also made sure that they were sticking to standard, which made it also very easy to update in the future and to make sure we can build on top of that. As I said, the main goal was to get the basics where they can grow onto, so that's why it's very important that we start with the processes included in Odoo to make sure we can grow onto that. Maybe the most important thing on the slide and maybe on this whole presentation is the next one, and that's efficient training and change management. What we see is when you do a migration this large from a system, you have to tackle a lot. There are a lot of people involved, a lot of departments involved, and also all these departments work with NetSuite, and they already had a migration, which means people know how it is to do a migration, and also know that it sometimes can be quite hard. There have been some implementations that did not quite fit the business, or something that took longer than expected, or maybe things that were done at all. So that's why it's very important to invest enough in change management and training to make sure that people know what is Odoo, how does it work, and how can you improve that. So for us it was one of the main important things, that we focused enough on training and change management, and we also made sure that everybody was aware of what we would do, when, and how it benefits them. Lastly, start using Odoo terms. It sounds maybe a bit silly, but we see in the beginning people are used to their old terms, and mostly NetSuite terms in this case. So for example, they were using assembly orders, but Odoo is using manufacturing orders. And it's just a slight difference, but it's when you start working together on such a big project and at such a short time, it's very important to all speak the same language. Luckily for us, we're specialized in manufacturing and warehousing, so we speak the business language. But besides that, it's also important that you speak the same system language. So that's why we, from the beginning, advised them to start using Odoo terms. In the beginning, it took a while to adjust, but after a while, it's very easy if you speak about the same things and you speak the same language. And what are the results and benefits for Ayano? First of all, a fully digital warehouse and production. I think that is one of the most important and major things that changed. is a digital footprint they have now. It's very important for a company this large, if they want to grow, that they have real-time data. And you only get real-time data if you include scanning, manufacturing, and also make sure that everything is followed up right. They also need a very strict follow-up, so also some pallets and packagings were also included to make sure they had the right timestamps and to make sure that everything, if something went wrong, they could trace it back and to fix it. Extensive reporting, mainly on financial side, was very important. Before Odoo and NetSuite, they were working sometimes 2 weeks before the deadline every month, just to make sure that the tax report was done on time. 2 weeks. In Odoo now, this shows out of the box. So that's a really big improvement for the finance department. They were spending so much time on it. Now they can focus on other things, which means they can improve. And lastly, future-proof for expansion. First of all, we started with the basics to make sure they have everything they need. But on top of that, it's also important that they are future-proof. They want to grow and they want to change something. So for us, it was really important that everything we do was in line with our strategic goal. And that's why we also started with this review in the beginning and the analysis to understand what is their goal, what is their ambition, and everything we do afterwards has to be in line with this ambition. And that's why, for us, future-proof is very important. One more thing, it's not on the slide, but I think it's very interesting. One of my colleagues always say this. He always says to me, when you migrate and there is change but no resistance, the change isn't big enough. And I find it very inspiring because when you do a project this large, you invest a lot of time, effort, and money in it. So I think it's really important when you do this change, you also have to invest in making this change, to make it affordable, but also to get a result out of it. And that's why I think when you do a migration this big, don't settle for less, don't just do a migration, but see what are the improvements. How can we improve our processes? How can we improve our reporting? How can our people do more in less time, like Odoo says? And that's exactly what we did here to make sure that everything went right. The last thing I'm going to say here is that when you do this, you don't only focus on the migration. It's not a step, it's a process. It's not a one-time fix, so you migrate to Odoo and everything is ready. No. Also with NetSuite, they decided to stop investing in it because it wasn't fit for their business needs. But with Odoo, when they now have the basics, the most important step begins. And that's keep on growing and growing with it and expanding on all the pain points they have and improving as an organization. And exactly this what we try to make sure that everything they do is aligned with our strategic goal. All right, I see I got to the end of the presentation. Thank you all for joining today. I see we have some time for questions, I think. So you can just scan the QR code, you get to the pad, and from there, I'm happy to answer your questions. But before that, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
So, thank you for this presentation. I have some questions for you. So the first one is, what is the level of automatization of production line of your clients? Is it manual works mostly, or you have done some integration with PLC?
Yeah, for now it's manual integration because they have some production machines. I think they have 4 or 5 in Belgium, but they are not integrated into Odoo yet. For now it's a manual confirmation of every production, but in time, maybe we can improve it. It's possible, we have IoT solutions, so it's possible, but for now it's not yet the case, because for them it was already a huge step to just digitalize. Let's see if in the future it could be surely possible. There are also ambition and plans, but for now I think it's already a huge step that they just digitalize from using paper.
So the next one is, did you migrate old data?
We didn't migrate all the data. We only started with the master data, so contacts, products, specific product requirements, all around that. The bill of materials were integrated. And then when we did the switch, we have our own tool in which we can retrieve data from NetSuite and implement in Odoo in real time So when they made the switch, we can now just click a button and the outstanding sales order, purchase order, or manufacturing orders are automatically integrated in Odoo so that they can switch from one day to another.
So the next one is, who did the help to choose NetSuite first?
Sorry?
Who did help you to choose NetSuite first?
I don't understand the question. Who did me help, or?
Yeah, to choose NetSuite first, not Odoo at the first time.
We only got involved once they were actually using NetSuite, so I don't know the real goal or why they chose NetSuite in the beginning. I guess I just got in contact with them and decided it was a good software. But yeah, I wasn't involved in that time.
So what is the different percentage of license cost between NetSuite and Odoo?
That's an interesting one. The difference in license is actually huge because we always make a business case when we do a project, and in most cases when we see NetSuite, and we have seen it a few times now, only the cost of saving in licenses in a few years, like 4 or 5 years, almost always pays for the implementation. So it's a huge savement they do by just integrating Odoo, and the lower license fees almost always pays the implementation over a period of 4 to 5 years.
So okay, the next one is, how long and how many full-time resources did you have on the project?
From the client side, we had 1 full-time key user and project manager, and then some stakeholders from the different departments. From our side, we had a team of 5 people working on it. It was me as a product owner, and I was helped by a few functional and technical analysts. And then we did about like 5 sprints, sprint of 2 weeks, so 5 sprints of 2 weeks with a team of 5 people.
All right. What was the total budget for the migration project for your clients?
I'm not sure if I can share the total price of the implementation, but if you guys are interested, we also have a booth at the stand. It's in Hall 7. It's booth I8. So if you want to get some more information, yeah, maybe we can see each other there. But yeah.
So how easy will future Odoo upgrades become?
Odoo upgrades can become quite easy, I guess. We already did a few updates. We also try to minimize the amount of customizations in the project. So we always strive to do maximum 5% custom, but we see in most cases, and also in this case, we don't get to the 5%. So we always keep it very low to make upgrades very easy and also very efficient.
So how did Odoo solve Romania subsidiary issues?
Yeah, so Odoo actually has the accounting, Odoo has the fiscal positions and everything for every company, and also Romania is included, which wasn't for NetSuite. Which wasn't for NetSuite. So yeah, in NetSuite it wasn't possible, but in Odoo we had also integrated Romania.
So I still have a last one, but it's still writing. So, what is the production performance of your clients? How many SKU and PCs per order? Just wait, because I cannot see. So, what is the production performance of your clients? How many SKU and PCs per day they produce?
I'm not sure per day. I know they do a manufacturing of more than 100,000 bottles each year, bottles and glasses. I think it's about like 130,000, sorry, millions, I'm saying thousands. It's like 100 million, 130 million bottles each year, yeah.
And maybe the last one, how do you start a project? Does the client need to sign off a complete project form to begin?
No, we don't do that, because as I can imagine, when I should be a client, it's very difficult to step into the project this large without having any confidence or not knowing the partner you're working with. So we always start with the review, then the analysis, and then the implementation. And for us, it are different cornerstones on which a client can decide if they continue or not. So we start with the review, and after this review, a client can decide if they want to pursue with the analysis. And after that, we start in sprints. And after each sprint, a client can decide when it's enough and when they want to implement and start using the system. So we actually think with the client and see what's possible to find the best possible solution, and are also flexible in this working, so they have a lot of time. And for us, communication is very important. So yeah.
So, all right, it was the last question, so thank you for this answer.
All right, thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.